Is Victoria Principal someone you know? She used to be the pinnacle of beauty on American TV. A brilliant Dallas star who was well-known, strong, and never one to settle for second place. Her gaze were cold and piercing as she emerged from a black limousine on set wearing a tight white coat. She never missed a line, insisted on lighting changes for all facial angles, and frequently left last, remaining to provide script notes. She contributed to the creation of a legend and was more than just an actor. She once won over Frank Sinatra, won over Anthony Perkins, and caused Andy Gibb to lose himself. She got married twice. While the other fell apart in the midst of financial controversy and rumors of abuse, the first terminated quietly. She never had children and didn't live to satisfy men. Her purpose in life was to remain authentic. And in order to protect the freedom she had never relinquished, she decided to leave, even though many people clung to marriage. Living alone on an animal rescue ranch at the age of 75, she continually asks herself, was I right? Or am I just pretending that I don't regret anything? Stay tuned, because long after this film concludes, you will still be thinking about Victoria Principal's passionate love and the moments she decided to leave. Victoria had had a variety of relationships before she fell completely into her tragic romance with Andy Gibb. These relationships were brief but revealed a lot about her as a young woman, curious, sensitive, and sensible enough to not lose herself. Frank Sinatra was among the names that caught me off guard. When Victoria was still a young woman navigating Hollywood in the early 1970s, she had a few dates with the famed American singer, who was almost 35 years her older. She never elaborated, simply mentioning in a brief interview that she much admired him but that the age difference was too big to hope for anything long-lasting. Prior to Sinatra, Victoria had an intense relationship with Anthony Perkins, the principal actor in Psycho, who was still juggling his sexuality and the pressures of society. Victoria later stated that the relationship was Anthony's first physical love, stating that although they were both lost, they were very gentle with each other. The other belonged to no one. They made no commitments. Once, two lonely individuals sought solace in one another. Victoria left her early love affairs behind and entered her first marriage with the earnest conviction that matrimony could provide stability. But she never imagined that stability itself would prove to be so disheartening and demoralizing. Victoria Principal, who played Pamela Barnes on CBS's Dallas in 1978, was at the height of her career. She got to know Christopher Skinner, a budding actor and director in the American television industry, on set. Known for his part in James at 16 at the time, Skinner went on to make cameos in popular television series including Chips and Dallas. The interaction was quick yet significant. They chose to tie the knot that same year after only 3 dates. The sensation was exquisite and brilliant, as Victoria once put it. Skinner walked next to her wearing a traditional black three-piece suit and a black bow tie, as though the timing and the person had all fallen into place. But the dream was far from reality. Working on set, Victoria put in up to 75 hours every week. In contrast, Skinner wished for a wife who would stay at home and raise a family, something Victoria was never able to do. She had no desire to pause for anyone. Her decision to put her all into her job and turn down anything that would require her to sacrifice her identity was not selfish, rather, it was a lifestyle choice. Just two people discovering they loved in different ways, no controversy, no third party in the marriage. In 1980, after 2 years of dating, they split up, and a year later they quietly completed their divorce. Victoria never chastised her ex-husband in public. She still saw that marriage in some regard as an adventure rather than a failure. As for Skinner, he stepped back from the limelight following the breakup. He never got married again, despite being the love interest of numerous ladies in that time period. Christopher Skinner is still unmarried in private today, avoiding the spotlight as though he would rather live in peace than in the spotlight. A prime illustration of the impetuous errors of youth was that first marriage, with all its early fervor and peaceful conclusion. 3 dates could be sufficient to get married, but not enough to determine whether you're genuinely headed in the same direction. The following love was a far too deep dive, if the previous marriage was a decision made too quickly. Less than a year after Victoria and Christopher Skinner signed their divorce papers, she appeared on a TV show with Andy Gibb, the Bee Gees' youngest singer. She was unable to resist the allure of a blazing, all-consuming love that looked impenetrable for the first time, but when it was pushed too far, it ultimately suffocated them both. Victoria Principal and Andy Gibb were said to have an instant and electric chemistry when they first met in January 1981 on The John Davidson Show. Victoria was 31 years old at the time and well known for her portrayal of Pamela. Texas. The youngest of the Bee Gees brothers, Andy, was only 23 years old when he was sacked from Solid Gold for persistent tardiness and unpredictable conduct associated with drug usage. He was charming, young, and attractive. He openly declared, "I only watched Dallas because of her." To Victoria, that was a kind remark. Audiences viewed it with admiration. It was a symptom of a soul in dire need of something to cling to, however, to those who knew Andy well. Their love for one another was intense. No concealment, no prudence. Andy joined Victoria on TV specials, performed with her at public occasions, and recorded a duet called All I Have to Do Is Dream. On the Billboard Hot 100, the single, which was released in the middle of 1981, reached at number 53. It was the only record Victoria ever made and Andy's last single. What appeared to be a lovely love song turned out to be nothing more than the prelude to a catastrophe. Victoria put in up to 75 hours a week on set. But Andy was there in every void of her time. He called all the time and left dozens of messages when she didn't answer. He once stood outside the studio for 4 hours just to talk to her for a short while. For Victoria, it was a sign of commitment. However, it was disturbing to others in her vicinity. According to a close acquaintance, Andy didn't love Victoria. Her presence became a habit for him. Remarrying was not anything Victoria desired. After one peaceful divorce, she now wanted control over her life. However, Andy lost self-control. His affection became erratic, demanding, and furious. He was afraid to lose her. And in an attempt to cling to something that was already evaporating, he turned to narcotics. Victoria set him a deadline of March 1982. "You have to decide between me and the drugs." But Andy was unable to decide. And it was Victoria who turned to leave once more. Victoria revealed to individuals years after Andy Gibb's passing that the separation preceded the drug use. However, she added, "I tried my best to assist him, but ultimately I had to tell him. He was forced to pick between his issue and me." Andy fell into depression after the separation. He lost financial control, stopped performing, and shunned the studio. He was unable to move and was bedridden for 2 weeks at one point. Friends turned away. He got dropped by the label. His heart literally and figuratively started to break. Andy Gibb passed away in March 1988, 2 days after turning 30, from viral myocarditis. His death was attributed to a lengthy and dramatic unraveling of love, fame, and the man himself, but the official cause was illness. Victoria did not appear publicly at the funeral, but in a later interview, when asked if she regretted anything, she simply said, "I just didn't expect that peace to be death." And to this day, many still wonder, did she truly let go of it all, or did she carry a shard of that heartbreak with her for the rest of her life? After parting ways with Andy Gibb in March 1982, Victoria Principal said she wanted some peace, but life, it seemed, was never willing to let her rest for long. In early 1983, she met Dr. Harry Glassman, a well-known plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills, in the most unexpected of circumstances. Victoria had just walked away from a heartbreak with Andy, while Harry was entangled in a property dispute with his ex-wife Jane. There were even rumors that the ring he gave Victoria was a recycled wedding band. Victoria firmly denied it. A gentle reply, but also a powerful statement of autonomy, from a woman who had already endured enough pain. Perhaps because they were both in a state of fracture, they found in each other a kind of temporary peace, one that soon grew into something serious. Victoria didn't just love Harry. She loved his 2 children from a previous marriage and cared for them as if they were her own. Though she had never intended to remarry, she once said, "If I ever marry again, the only man I'd ever want to marry is Harry." And she did just that. On June 23, 1985, they were wed in Dallas, at a time when Victoria was one of the biggest stars in America as Pamela Ewing. They lived in a nearly 7,000 square foot home in Beverly Hills, far from the spotlight, almost never discussing their private lives. Images of the couple hand in hand at events from the 1983 Golden Globes to a charity gala in 2000 suggested a life of harmony and lasting affection. To many, this was a different Victoria. Mature, discreet, and finally anchored after storms of romance, they had no children together. Rumors spread that Victoria didn't want to have children out of fear it would affect her figure, especially since she was running her own skincare company, building a brand around the idea of natural beauty. But in an interview with TV Guide, she made a rare, vulnerable admission. It was one of the few times that strong, self-possessed woman revealed a crack. Small, but painfully real. And over time, that crack widened. They remained close for nearly 21 years. With a relationship so private, the press rarely touched it. They had no children. Rumors persisted about her not wanting to sacrifice her appearance. But again, she firmly stated, "I don't have children not because I didn't want to, but because I couldn't." Then, in May 2006, Victoria filed for divorce, citing irreconcilable differences. The divorce petition was filed at the Los Angeles Superior Court on May 23, 2006. The divorce was finalized in December that same year. Victoria later moved to Malibu, alongside property she owned in Big Sur, California, and Switzerland. So why did this 2-decade-long marriage, so seemingly grounded, come to an end? The first crack appeared publicly in 2002. When Beverly Hills police raided their home after receiving reports that the actress had been physically assaulted, leaving marks on her eye, lip, neck, and cheek. Glassman was arrested, blaming Victoria's drinking, and later released on £35,000 bail. The charges were eventually dropped, and Glassman claimed the incident was a misunderstanding with police, attributing it to Victoria's alleged alcohol use. But the shadow of that incident lingered behind their closed doors. When the divorce unfolded, the media began digging deeper. Many questioned whether Dr. Glassman, a renowned cosmetic surgeon, had ever performed procedures on his own wife and if he secretly kept documentation of every enhancement. And if so, did he use that as leverage to blackmail her, to pressure Victoria into choosing between silence or public exposure? Rumors grew louder when multiple sources claimed Victoria had to pay over $50 million to settle the division of assets, despite having a prenuptial agreement, in order to protect both their reputations. In the face of growing speculation, she hit back firmly. "That is a vicious fabrication. I didn't pay for silence. I paid to get my peace back." Their marriage, in the end, came to a close. Not with the loud spectacle of a typical Hollywood breakup, but with a quiet undercurrent of shadows and unanswered questions. No one truly knows what happened inside that Beverly Hills mansion. But one thing is certain, Victoria chose to walk away once again, not because she didn't try, but because she could no longer endure living in a love where respect had faded and everything else was slowly falling silent. Beyond a personal life marked by upheaval and heartbreak, she was also a CEO, a model of the modern, successful, independent woman. And that didn't happen by chance. Behind Victoria Principal's glamorous appearance was someone who had spent years struggling with her own skin. During the filming of Dallas, constant makeup, harsh lighting, and an exhausting schedule left her face dry, lifeless, and worn down. "I used to cry when I looked in the mirror," she recalled. "And I pondered, what must it be like for other women if I, with all the resources at my disposal, feel this hopeless?" She started Principal Secret, a skincare brand that emphasizes nourishment and restoration, in 1989 as a result of the encounter. However, Victoria was actively involved in the production process, in contrast to many celebrities who only endorse a product. She spent months testing each recipe on her own skin, turned down dozens of samples because the perfume wasn't natural enough, and even penned her own advertising material to make sure the message reflected her belief that women don't need to alter who they are. All they need to do is regularly and lovingly take care of themselves. Victoria stayed away from gaudy marketing even as CEO. Her advertisements lacked 18-year-old models and spectacular effects. Only Victoria, 40 years old, is able to look directly into the camera and say, "I didn't recognize myself once, but I've learned to love myself again." For more than 25 years, Principal Secret became a top brand in television-distributed cosmetics thanks to its genuineness, making hundreds of millions of dollars and cultivating a devoted following of largely middle-aged women who had long felt underappreciated. According to industry insiders, Principal Secret brought in more than $1 billion over the course of 3 decades. Victoria Principal is thought to have amassed a personal wealth of between $200 and $300 million as the creator, CEO, and only spokesperson for the company. This amount greatly exceeds any money she made from performing. Her accomplishments not only demonstrated her business savvy but also positioned her alongside notable female beauty industry entrepreneurs such as Cindy Crawford, Meaningful Beauty, and Jessica Alba, The Honest Company. However, in contrast to them, Victoria did not require support from the media or social media. With nothing more than honesty, self-control, and unwavering perseverance, she created a whole beauty business. Naturally, success was accompanied by criticism. Victoria came under fire from the media for promoting natural beauty. Her spouse, plastic surgeon Harry Glassman, was rumored to have done cosmetic surgery on her. Although she vehemently refuted the allegations, she never played the victim. She decided to be quiet instead, displaying the silent power of someone who is confident in herself and doesn't need to prove it to others. After leading her company for more than 20 years, Victoria left the cosmetics industry in 2019. There was no fanfare or press conference. A succinct statement. "I need to focus my energies on other things, like peace, animals, and environment." This departure was also not an end, much like her departure from Hollywood. The decision was made. In order to live her life as she desired, a woman once reached the top and then decided to drop back. No concessions, no authorization required. And no other person's consent is necessary. As many aging actors retire to luxury cruises or rose gardens, Victoria Principal looked up into the sky. She disclosed in a well-known interview that she had bought a ticket for Virgin Galactic's commercial launch, the ambitious space tourism initiative headed by billionaire Richard Branson, not for publicity or to add another accomplishment to an already impressive record. But just because, in her words, I want to observe the Earth from a distance and I hope to get back safely. That dream wasn't the result of a whim. Astronomy had always been a hobby of hers. She devoted many evenings to astronomy, reading books about the cosmos, and fostering a deep-seated belief that all people, whether well-known or obscure, are but little dots in the expanse of space. However, she didn't really dare to make that desire a reality until she had parted ways with her spouse, career, and stage lights. A remarkable contradiction is created by the picture of a woman who was once renowned for her beauty and now longs to depart the planet. After years of being characterized by an ideal body, a perfect face, and the image of an immortal woman, Victoria might have had only one wish: to escape the images that the world had imposed on her, to view herself and people from a distance that would allow her to discern between what is genuine and what has been nothing more than makeup for too long. Space was not a place to prove anything, according to Victoria Principal. It was a place where she could let go of everything: flashlights, flawless eyeliner, just herself, the infinite, and, at last, her own insignificance. Will she really travel to space? Perhaps it isn't important. Because she had already covered more ground than most of us will ever cover when she purchased the ticket and dared to share the dream with the world. Not beyond space, but beyond the boundaries we set for ourselves. Victoria Principal decided to discreetly withdraw to a little nook on the outskirts of Los Angeles when the lights went out, after the intense love affairs that flared and then died, and after every time she rose from the ashes. Cameras and red carpets are over. Rather, a huge sanctuary where she would live out the rest of her days tending to creatures that the world had forgotten. Since 2012, scores of abused or abandoned dogs, cats, and other animals have been in the care of the formerly well-known actress. This is not a place she opened to attract attention. She also didn't initiate a movement. It was just a peaceful voyage, lived as she had always lived, gently yet resolutely. Every animal was greeted by her, given names, taken for medical attention, had their habits retrained, and she remained by their side until they recovered. To many, it appears to be a former Hollywood star going about her quiet life. However, it was a route to recovery for Victoria. And it's possible that she poured her love into creatures who couldn't be betrayed when she lost faith in human-to-human love. They don't require my beauty. They don't require my fame. She once observed, all they need is for me to be gentle and present. In an uncommon interview, Victoria disclosed that she had spent a significant portion of her life feeling noticed but never fully comprehended. Finally, she could be herself in a judgment-free environment. Just listening to a starved animal's strained breath and offering a hand, no makeup, no acting. The sanctuary has no signage and no tours, yet visitors report that it feels serene and quiet, like a monastery. And Victoria appeared more at ease than in any role she had ever performed, bare-faced, wearing an old button-up shirt, and with crow's feet framing her eyes. Victoria Principal's greatest love may have ultimately been with silent beings who were unable to speak but somehow saved a heart that had been subjected to too much noise, rather than with any man. At Victoria Principal's Malibu mansion, the quiet post-Christmas atmosphere abruptly descended into a media frenzy on December 26, 2005. The actress's cherished canine had been taken for a stroll by Maribel Banegas, her longtime cleaner, but did not arrive back on schedule. When she returned, Victoria's pet, which she regarded as one of her children, was reportedly coughing excessively, experiencing back discomfort, and displaying indications of being pulled, bleeding. Victoria summoned the housekeeper in to address her because she was furious. She allegedly took a revolver out of the house and pointed it at the woman when she didn't get what she thought was a good enough answer. In line with what Banegas says, the two ultimately went to court together. According to Banegas, she was threatened with death if she didn't leave the residence right away because she had requested to be paid her past due pay. The incident had gotten out of hand to the point where Victoria felt threatened, so she said she took action to protect herself and her cat. The public was shocked, but no criminal charges were brought against anyone. This was the same woman, renowned for her grace and kindness, who had left Hollywood to live a peaceful life surrounded by animals and the natural world. She was now accused of acting violently and threatening the life of a staff member over what appeared to be a small altercation. The case made headlines in various media, including ABC News and People. The caring star and the shadow of her own power were even compared in the Telegraph as two worlds colliding violently. Even after Banagas formally apologized and dismissed the case, the incident's effects persisted. The public perception of Victoria as a healer was no longer unchallenged. There was a crack. Victoria Principal knew she was valuable even without praise. Throughout her life, she made the decision to leave. Sometimes from love, sometimes from attention, but never out of weakness, but rather because she knew what made her feel at ease. Every decision she made was silent but wholly her own, from becoming a beauty icon on TV to becoming the CEO of a well-known skincare company to becoming a recluse woman on a ranch with animals and fantasies of seeing Earth from space. She was never a mother. At one point, she drew a gun because she loved a puppy. She was extremely committed to herself despite making decisions that others might find questionable. And maybe the most significant legacy Victoria Principal leaves behind is her quiet, unflinching determination. And you? In order to protect yourself, have you ever had to leave something you loved? Can you imagine living a life without the desire for approval from others? Yet in its own unique manner feels complete and profoundly meaningful? Leave a comment below with your ideas, as your tale may be just what someone else needs to hear. Please remember to hit the notification bell, like, and subscribe if you would like to continue exploring more travels like this one. This will ensure that you don't miss our next videos featuring Victoria Principal and other iconic celebrities. Until the next story.